UK, migration is reaching record levels. 30 years ago, there were just over 250,000 arrivals. Last year, over 1.2 million arrived in the country. Recently, we have seen anti-immigration riots spreading across the streets of England. Many want to make their voice known, but it's not limited to just this nation. France and the Netherlands have gained huge surges in support of anti-immigration political parties. A growing number of people seem to have had enough of mass immigration. But what lies at the heart of this unrest? Is it truly a reaction to the economic strains that immigration may impose, or is it a question of deeper, underlying cultural issues? The aim here is to provide some much-needed nuance to the conversation. We will focus on the UK at first, briefly providing their recent history with immigration, analysing its effects, then examining exactly how recent events boiled over to breaking point, determining the justification for both arguments in both an economic and cultural sense. The problem started in the 2000s. The UK, under Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair, opened their labour market to new EU member states such as Poland and Romania. This decision, driven by the belief that increased labour mobility would benefit the economy by filling skill gaps, led to millions of Eastern Europeans migrating over the next decade, far exceeding government predictions. Feeling lied to, tensions rose amongst many British citizens, with immigration suddenly becoming a central issue in British politics, culminating in the 2016 Brexit referendum. The new Conservative government's failure to reverse migration trends, coupled with rising concerns over cultural integration and public service pressure, mirrored broader European concerns. The introduction of a points-based immigration system in 2021 aimed to prioritise skilled workers. Most people expected this initiative, along with the reduction of European migration, to solve the underlying issue. However, it only succeeded at changing the type of migrant entering the country. Last year, migration to the UK from EU citizens was minus 86,000, meaning many more left the country than those arriving. Net migration of non-EU migrants, on the other hand, was 768,000. The failure to stop skyrocketing immigration, particularly by illegal means, was a huge reason for the Conservatives losing the most recent election. Now, let's be clear, those arriving on boats, despite appearing on most immigration-related news headlines, only account for a small proportion of total immigration. When it was at its peak in 2022, 45,000 immigrants came from boats, a tiny fraction of the total 1.2 million. A huge number of immigrants are students who do not stay in the country after completing their degree. 450,000 study visas were issued by the government last year, half of those to Indian and Chinese nationals. The rest of the migrants come for work or are dependent on those working or studying. Many particularly fill jobs in the NHS. Now let's tackle the central question: is immigration a net positive for the economy? It's difficult to answer because it affects so many different areas, but let's start with some of the pros or misconceptions about the effects of immigration on the economy. The argument that immigrants take all the native jobs is false. Immigration does not affect the wages or employment of anyone in the country. A recent study covering UK immigration from 1994 to 2016 found that the impact on the hourly wage of low-paid workers was minimal, reducing it by just 0.5p per year, while higher-paid workers actually saw a slight increase in their wages. Although many believe immigrants put unnecessary pressure on services such as the NHS, they are, on the contrary, crucial for its survival, as it relies heavily on foreign-born staff. About 20% of doctors and 33% of nurses in England come from abroad. Most of the pressures the NHS faces come from the elderly population. As most immigrants are young, they are less likely to have long-term illnesses. Crime rates are also identical between those born in and outside of the country. The main cause of crime is, and always has been, inequality and impoverishment, not race or background. Crime rates are much better now than before the huge surge in immigration, though the news may not portray it that way. Violent crime fell to a 4-decade low in 2023, with only 1/5 as many incidents per 1,000 people in England and Wales as at the peak in 1995. Immigration creates a larger workforce, so the economy should be larger. In theory, this should help lower the amount of government debt as a percentage of total GDP, easing the burden of public finances. This is where we get into the cons. Debt has only risen since the pandemic. Economic growth has been extremely small in recent years, despite the record immigration levels. There is no evidence that GDP per capita, or output per person, rises with high by immigration. It depends highly on the productivity of the immigrants coming in. Although many high-skilled workers may arrive, the dependents that come alongside them, as well as those seeking asylum, bring overall productivity down to a negligible increase. Some economic challenges posed by immigration are significant, but only because there has been no coordinated infrastructure strategy to manage the huge influx of people. Starting with the Blair era, government investment in key services has not kept up with the demands of a growing population. The austerity era under the Cameron government demonstrated the effects of slashing public spending at a time when more and more people were in need. This lack of planning and funding has also put immense pressure on the housing market, where increased demand has worsened a crisis characterized by the low supply of house building. As a result, price rises have been unsustainable, making it harder for people, especially young, first-time buyers, to find affordable homes. One study found that for every 1% increase in the number of households, house prices increase by around 2%. So the UK housing crisis is caused by a failure in government building policy and exacerbated further by high levels of immigration. Government spending on the asylum system to provide for those arriving on boats has also skyrocketed, reaching $4 billion in 2023, up from $630 million in 2018. Many are understandably upset with these figures, especially in conjunction with the reduction of budgets for other public services. However, asylum spending only represents 0.3% of total government spending. It's a drop in the water, really. Therefore, many argue that perhaps the economic side effects of immigration are overblown. Perhaps the issue for most people isn't one of economic nature, but instead culture. Yes, this is an economics channel, but it's clear when looking at social media discourse, as well as the recent riots, that British opinions on immigration are made up solely of social and cultural factors. Many argue that large-scale immigration has led to significant integration failures, where some communities have struggled to assimilate into British society, leading to social fragmentation. But it's deeper than that for most of the working class. The decline of the native British majority in certain areas has heightened fears. Many feel that their cultural identity and way of life are being eroded. Some will call these people racist, bigoted, or far-right, but these people will argue that they are just regular people who have been ignored by their government for far too long. So, what does the future of immigration in Britain look like? Early indications suggest it will decline over the next few years. Applications for work visas in the health and care sector have fallen by an astonishing 82% this year, while the number of people moving away from the UK is increasing. This could lead to a sudden dramatic drop in migration figures very soon. It could end the raging arguments overnight. But what economic effects could this have? Will the labour force go into disarray? Will the NHS suffer? Or could government funds free up? And will currently broken systems such as housing finally be allowed to go into a state of repair? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching.